And tonight we have a special event to discuss the topics of Black masculinity. But first, we want to introduce our guest, and that's Brian. Brian is a good brother, cool brother that I've known for a good while, and he's been always influential, and I think he's going to be an asset for you, okay? And the next one we're going to get into is Bensky, another good young brother, has a podcast for Everybody Eats, if I get that right, okay, Everybody Eats. And then he also has a clothing line called Kilty, right? Did I say that right?
Yes.
Kilty. So we'll get into these brothers real quick. So first, Brian, if you can share with us, first top 3 questions I'm looking at right here is, where you're from, what do you do, and who is the best influence on today's hip hop?
Okay, all right, I can get right into it. First, Chris, I just definitely want to just show you some love personally, and for allowing me to be on your platform. This is my first time actually ever doing anything like this. Definitely a pleasure to be on the platform. Bensky, pleasure to be having this fellowship with both of you brothers. Where am I from? So I was born and raised in a town called Louisville, Washington. It's in North Carolina. If you don't know, you don't know. But it's in the east part of North Carolina, close to the beach. From there, I moved to D.C. and then Maryland. Now I'm here in Texas. I actually work in the financial industry, basically helping people with financial planning, basically connecting their goals and matching, my institution's resources to exactly what they want to do, no matter what it is. Investing, small business needs. Obviously, Chris, you know a lot about that. And also too, just basically helping people plan for the future, whether it be, 2 weeks from now, 6 months, or 10, 20 years. You know what I mean? So that's basically what I do, for a living. Now, who's the biggest influence on hip hop today? Now, you talking about for me or hip hop in general?
You know what? I'm gonna say for you, because I'd like to. Everybody has their own concept of what that is. I got mine, but I'll let you guys say that yours first. But yeah, Brian, take it away.
All right. So for me, it's Black Thought.
Okay.
And the reason being is this. It's one of those things where it's like, obviously, I don't like to separate the discussion when you're talking about how hip hop has changed. I don't want to disrespect what the younger generation is into and how, obviously they're getting paid. So I'm never going to downplay anything people do and how styles change. I don't want to sound like the old grandpa saying, oh, well, these back in the day we used to do bars. I'm not into that. But I will say Black Thought mainly because, obviously whenever he speaks or whenever he comes out with anything new, the ground shakes. And this is somebody who's been doing it since 1989, as what we know. Obviously you got people like Drake. You got a lot of artists out now that are big, but I feel like Black Thought could just, obviously the freestyle, he dropped the 11-minute freestyle on YouTube. When he comes out with that, it's like nobody else even exists. And this is, you're talking about somebody, what was that, 30 some years? Yeah. So that's for me. And I think he's imprinted on so many, people from 3 different decades. If you say his name, it's always respect. So Black Thought for me.
Okay. All right. Appreciate you, Brian. Definitely would say, there's some contenders out there, but he's, definitely a solidified character in the hip hop community. That's definitely for sure. All right. So next we got my man Bensky, my man right here all the way from Queens. I ain't gonna say too much more, about this brother.
Yes,
I want him to have the shine because I've been taking all the shine. So,
yes,
Bensky, take it away, my brother.
For sure. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be on your platform. So introduction, yes, my name is Bensky there. Born in Queens, grew up Valley Stream, so one town over. Right now, working in Norfolk, Virginia for a financial management company. Also have a podcast, Everybody Eats podcast. So that's a little bit about myself. So the question about regarding hip hop, it was who is the biggest or best influence on hip hop?
I would say is the biggest influence on hip hop.
Biggest influence. That's a loaded question. I think for me personally, I think one of the biggest influences is J. Cole, and that's just like a personal. I would say close to this generation, I think he'd be one of the biggest and personally the best influence. I think someone who's just a little bit like, he can spit bars, but still be like a positive message and still give, be positive. Not only just like in the music, but like Black Lives Matter, protest. Um, you know, was someone who was also in the street, and doing what he had to do. Like he wasn't just, um, you know, saying things and not, showing it, but like he was also in the street. You saw him protesting, you saw him doing all that. So I think he was one of the biggest and best, influences.
Real quick, Bensky, I know we had a little technical difficulty. If you can actually restate the artist that you spoke of, I want to make sure that our listeners out there can hear us, and they can be like, okay, yeah, I can hear this brother. Do you mind sharing one more time?
Yeah, for sure. So real quick, can you guys hear me good now? I don't want to like chop up.
You perfect
now. Okay, perfect. So the artist for me was J. Cole. So again, the artist for me was J. Cole because like I said, not only is he like in his music, is he spinning bars, is he's talking about real things, but then also like you can see like in the streets, like he was out there marching, he was out there protesting, he was out there, doing what he was talking about, So I think that's one of the biggest and one of the best influences in hip hop.
Something.
Carolina bread.
Bread, that's a fact.
I actually saw that brother J. Cole for his Forest Hills Drive tour, and this is when he first came to the smaller cities first, and then he went to like the bigger communities because he felt like the smaller communities, small theaters, they don't get the whole love, and they miss out on the opportunity. But definitely a great show. I would say for me, Nas has a great influence on hip hop.
Oh yeah.
There are others, Tribe Called Quest and those things, but Nas, for some reason, man, like you pull out, One Love, and I'm like, dang, like it's just the message is dope, and it's the lyrical way he's done it. I actually seen this documentary, great documentary. If you ever want to watch a dope documentary on it.
Okay.
Definitely Nas too. So appreciate that, fellas. Definitely want to get into the next thing. So we're gonna play a little game real quick, and it's called Black Card Revoked. It's a good way to kind of break the ice a little bit. So I'm gonna ask this question, and again, everybody's answer might be a little different based on background, maybe based on culture. But I think it's really like the person who has the most answer, or the answer that is actually between you guys that's the same or similar is the correct answer, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of subjective. All right. So here we go. How do you know you definitely might be at grandma's house? Is it A, there's a house phone? B, there's a judge show on TV? C, there's no central air? Or D, there's plastic on the furniture?
It's plastic on the furniture, man.
It's plastic. It's plastic.
It's plastic on the furniture.
Okay, Jordy won on that. Plastic on the furniture. I had it too. I remember sometimes we was either sliding or sweating on that thing. I mean, it was
stuck.
You get up, your back is gonna be stuck to it.
Oh yeah.
Now, I think Bensky and I are gonna probably reason on this one. We're gonna say, hey, we know exactly where this comes from. But here we go. So the Timberland boot is the official shoe of which city? Atlanta, A, B, New York, C, Chicago, D, Philly.
Come on, gotta get your butters. That's a New York thing. That's a New York thing.
I bet.
Oh, man.
Definitely is a New York thing. I'm Brian. I even had to ask. I'm pretty much you already know.
So I remember, like obviously, late high school, moving to DC. Even then, I knew it was a New York thing, and then Philly, and then like the DMV area. I always knew that was a New York thing, always.
So what's the DMV thing? DMV, what kind of kicks is DMV?
So I mean, qualify. I haven't been there in a little while, but I remember the DMV that's who made New Balances really big in Black culture. New Balances was, that was really not really. That was like an orthopedic shoe. And basically orthopedic and then running. It was just extreme. Either you was running track or you was, you know what I mean? Like, a older, Caucasian gentleman. But, obviously New Balances, big deal. Tim's was a big deal too in DC though. But New York fashion influences everywhere. You know what I mean? So you know how that goes.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to do two more. You get pulled over by the cops. Do you, question, A, start reaching for stuff, B, get out and have a conversation, C, drive off, D, leave your hands on the wheel and pray?
Hands on the wheel and brake.
Hands on the wheel and pray.
Hands on the wheel, brake. Fellas, young brothers, hands on the wheel, brake. Please don't make the wrong move. All right. So, and that's something I definitely wanted to, when I saw that question, I was like, I definitely want to bring that up, as far as I know it's kind of seems controversial, but it kind of intertwines with what we're talking about today too. But, one of the things how do other cultures see us, and how do, especially the police culture, how do they see us? And so those are one of those things that I would definitely agree. No sudden movements. Next question, last question. You see somebody take money out the collection plate. Do you, A, tell the usher, B, ask Jesus to take the wheel, C, give him the evil eye, or D, ask for a cut of it? Majority wins.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Oh man. I don't know. They might be ahead of the curve. I don't know. I'm gonna have to tell somebody. I might have to snitch, man. In that instance, I might have to do it because it might be my money. If it passed me, I'm telling. Like,
I was gonna say Jesus take the wheel, but
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Nah, but that's a good point. I don't want it to be my money that you take it out.
If it passed me already, oh yeah, it's not going like that. Like that.
No doubt. Definitely, we don't want to be stealing in church. So,
yeah.
All right, so we thank y'all for playing real quick with me on that one. That was definitely something that was fun and engaging. But the next, and of course, the main topic of the show is Black masculinity. So today we are tackling that subject, and we're asking the questions: what does it mean? Who does it affect, and what are the ways that young Black men can overcome negative stereotypes? Okay, so. First question, and it's the main topic, but what does actual Black masculinity mean? What do you guys think it means?
Okay. You running the show, man. You got to tell us who's up. Who's at bat.
Brian, I'll let you start off. Since you just spoke for us, I appreciate you volunteering.
Well, I'm never going to be one to answer a question with a question because I do not like that. But I will say sometimes a question can you can expound on that because I feel like that's what we're going to do this evening. So the question is so loaded, but I will say this. The hoodie that you're wearing right now is so important. And honestly, if I drop the R and the E, that's exactly where we need to start at.
That was
obviously,
that was dope.
I'm a big, one of my heroes is Amos Wilson. Obviously, if a lot of people don't know who Amos Wilson is, you should. And not just if you're a black person, but Dr. Amos Wilson is probably one of the most amazing men I've ever listened to, ever read any of his work. But the definition of words like liberty and freedom, when you say man, it can mean different things culturally. It can mean so much, or it can mean so little, depending on who you are. As a man, in most people's mind, one of the first things that pops in your mind is what? Autonomy and freedom. What is freedom? It's being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, whenever you want to do it, right? But depending on who you are and what your cultural landscape is, you really don't have freedom. You have something called liberty. And liberty is being able to operate within confines. And whenever you're operating within the confines of something else, you're not the author of who you are. You're not the author of what you can do. And you're not the author of your future. So that's something where I feel like you have to start there first to figure out, okay, if I want to figure out who I am, I got to figure out, what I've come across, who's deciding that. Am I deciding who I am? Am I deciding what a Black man is? And if you're not, then it's just more and more questions, which is not a bad thing. But, for me, what it is it's freedom. You know what I mean? And it's the freedom to be, not always do. A lot of people, when you ask, especially the average person, even a guy, when you ask him, what is a man, they immediately start talking about what they do. Like, it's always about what action, what I can do. and what about what you are? What do you embody? Me, honestly, for me, I feel like to be a man, you are, you're a counterpart in the universe. I'm a very spiritual person. So I feel like I'm real big on yin and the yang. You know what I mean? The balance of not only the masculine, but the feminine, but being able to harness that in a masculine instrument, whether it be providing for my family, whether it be being a nurturer, because most people don't think of masculinity as nurturing, but in the pure sense of it, it is nurturing. You know what I mean? I want everybody to eat at this table more than I eat. The more I accumulate, the more everybody else has to accumulate. You know what I mean? If I'm an anomaly amongst all of my people that I love, then something's not right. So that to me is like what real masculinity is about and what manhood is about. You know what I mean? In a nutshell. And I try to keep it short. Sorry for being long-winded.
And no, and there's a lot to take away from what you just shared with us, man. But before we get into that, I want to get Bensky's take on that. What do you think as far as Black masculinity? What do you think it means to you, Bensky?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think when you first asked that question, the first thing that kind of came to mind was just like my father and everything that he kind of just like instilled in us growing up. Similar to what you said. He said a lot of people when they say masculinity, they kind of talk about what they do. But I think for me, the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is kind of like that. I don't know if you want to call it stereotypical, but kind of like just being a provider, being someone who's accountable, being someone who's responsible. To me, I think that's what masculinity is. And I guess we can speak about it a little bit maybe further in this discussion, but a lot of times you hear the word like toxic masculinity,
Brother.
right? So I think we'll save that for a little bit later, right? But
Hey,
you hear that word thrown out a lot. And I think, right, there are some characteristics and stereotypes about masculinity that, are harmful, but I think there are certain, characteristics of masculinity that are very positive and some things that should be passed down. Being accountable for your actions, no matter who you are, man, woman, whoever, you should have to be accountable for your actions. You have to be responsible. You should be a provider, either for yourself, for your family. It's going to be your kids, whether it's your brothers, your sisters. Like you said, people are at the table with you. That's part of being responsible, being accountable, and all that. So to me, I think when I think of masculinity, I think I guess the two biggest words that come to my head would be responsibility, like I guess accountability and provider.
No doubt. And I definitely would agree with you on that is, there's a lot of those norms, those social norms that people recognize us to be when it comes down to the household and being a provider and really being the person that, hey, we get out, we get the food, we hunt, we bring the food back home, we work, we do what we got to do. I can just share with you real quick, fellas, because I want to get some more input from you guys, especially when you brought up toxic masculinity. I didn't grow up with a father. My father didn't come into my life until I was 13. And so, our relationship has grown exponentially over time, just off the strength of the conversations that we have. And we have conversations, I would say almost every week, if not every other week. And we talk about a lot of different things. And eventually I'm gonna have him on the show as well.
It's powerful, man.
Real good dude, you know what I mean? And so, but I had to understand, why is it that he did what he did? And it's so crazy that I was going through a situation where I was literally going through the same thing of the reason why he would have done the same thing to me, like he did to me. I would almost have relived that same scenario. And, based off of me getting someone pregnant and, feeling like, dang, I really don't want to be with this person. And that's a whole nother topic right there by itself. But I was just understanding, and through that situation, I was understanding why is it that he wasn't in my life at that time up until age 13. But nonetheless, I see it as some of the greatest mentors of men I can tell you I've seen. And there's a couple of brothers that come in my life. I've honestly seen that they have honestly worked their behind off. They've done what they had to do. They're not afraid to be assertive. They're not afraid to hold their own, challenge. They laugh at challenge. They laugh at that fear, and it's nothing. The thing is that it's not to say that we can't have fear. It's not to say we can't be, show emotion, but it's the way and how we operate and respond to that. And so definitely, I definitely want to take that away. You mentioned something, Brian, earlier when you talked about, the aspect of being a provider and, how people perceive us. Can you, what do you think about when it comes down to being a young Black and looking to get into like, the corporate world and those things? Can you shed light on, what are some of the things that we can do or young Bloods can do to overcome some adversities and how people generally think of us when we walk into a room?
Okay, so it's very interesting. So it's crazy when you ask me that question, because I immediately think about myself now, then I think about myself maybe 10 years ago, and then 10 years before that. So I not only have like grown, we've all grown over that time and we've had experiences, but my scope into like the root of like where I'm from, not where I'm from like physically, what land I'm from, but like the experiences that I've been through and people like me, I've dug so deep and I'm still so far away from really getting to really any truth. It's just going to be more and more knowledge. So when you ask me that, I immediately think of, what am I? You know what I mean? And then also too, like, I'm glad you said black masculinity, because a lot of people have no idea, other than if you're a Black man, you don't even realize that is like something in and of itself. Masculinity, from what we see and what we see with cultural norms and how we're socialized, especially here, like I say, when a lot of us, we're not the authors of that. And we have to go so many years back to really realize like something as small as, okay, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be? I think that's why it's so confusing. It's not just how people perceive us when we're in normal cultural settings like the corporate setting, or, whether it be blue collar or whatever. It's not just a perception. It's the fact that we're unsure. You know what I mean? We are not the authors of exactly how we want to display our masculinity. So it's like everyone's confused. Even people that don't really have, anything against us. You know what I mean? No matter what race they are. So for me, it's definitely shown me a lot as far as like how I need to basically, honestly, not care about the perception. Choose to spiritually align myself with exactly, who I want to be, what I want to be. And that basically boils down to something Bensky said. Obviously, it's a good and bad thing that people, talk about men, or a man being a man is what you do. It's a reason why. It's because, and this may sound stereotypical, but when you need something done, who are you going to ask? You know what I mean? I'm just being real. Like, I'm just being this, and this is not even about chauvinistic or anything. I'm just telling you, when you really need something done and you want somebody to be real responsible, you're usually going to think about a good man. Or if you're going to think about something profound you heard, it's usually from a good man or a good woman. You know what I mean? Like, masculine energy doesn't always have to come from men, but we're talking about men today. So it's one of those things where it's like, for me, I just dictate on my own terms. People may not agree with me. They may not agree with everything I say, but I'm going to command respect. And that's usually how it is. Usually the most stand-up brother or stand-up person people didn't really agree with him a lot, but they always respected him. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just, this is such a big topic, man. Like, it's a big,
no, it's a lot to unpack.
like, it's a
There's a
big
reason
topic.
why I chose it. I wanted to be more, meat on the plate for us to kind of dig through and eat.
Yeah.
Bensky, you talked about, what you looked at as far as your father and the relationship you had with him. Can you elaborate on just generally what are some of those, characteristics that you've seen, in detail, like, a memory you kind of could say, well, dang, that's the kind of father I want to be, or that's the kind of man that I want to be. A lot of times we model after somebody in our family as we grow up. So if you can share about that'd be great for us.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely just a little bit, I guess, about my father. Like, grew up in Haiti, moved over here in his early 20s, put himself through school, worked multiple jobs while he was in school. Got married, met my mother, got married. I had my brother and I. working, making sure that my brother and I went to, you know, good elementary school, good high school, help put us through college and then beyond, right? So just seeing that whole journey, seeing that, just growing up with that's a whole example of in it of itself, you know, someone who took responsibility, you know, for his own actions, someone who was a provider, someone who was accountable. You know, so I think just that in general. um and I guess, you know, how it influenced my life is just, you know, as I'm in school, it always you always, you know, like reminded me like, hey, remember, you'd always remind me when I was in school, I had to work multiple jobs, you know, to put myself through, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, to make sure that you and your brother went to a good school, I had to, you know, I had to work he was a teacher, I had to work summer school, I had to work after school programs, you know, I had to do all that, you know, to make sure that we were living the best life that he could provide. And to me, you know, it's hard to necessarily pinpoint, and just within that, you know, making sure that, you know, we had clothes on our backs, you know, making sure that, you know, we were educated, just simply making sure we had our homework done, you know, and things like that, making sure we had, you know, time to have fun, you know, and making sure that like we just grew up wholesome, making sure that, you know, actually to help avoid some of that toxic masculinity, making sure we knew how to do simple tasks, making sure we knew how to clean, making sure we knew how to cook, making sure we knew how to iron, you know, making sure we knew how to, you know, do tasks around the house, so we don't end up, oh, I don't know how to do this because I'm a man. Not having that stereotypical like, oh, a woman has to be the one to cook for me, you know. And he's always say, you never know where life is going to put you, so you need to have these skills on you, or have these skills so you can be able to take care of yourself, you know. And to me, you know, that is, you could say, anti-toxic masculinity, because a lot of times when you think of toxic masculinity, you think of, oh, I'm a man, a woman has to do this for me. But it was more like, no, you're a man, you have to be able to have these skills so you can take care of yourself, right? So to me, I think that was one of the biggest lessons, because it allows me, one, to be curious and creative, because it's now I want to learn how to be able to cook myself. I want to make sure and be able, I can take care of myself, and I don't have to necessarily, oh, I'm a man, I'm not supposed to iron. I'm a man, I can't cook. I'm a man, I can't clean. You know, it's like, no, you're a man, you better know how to cook, clean, take care of yourself, and do all that. So I think that is one of slash probably like the best things, you know, he was able to teach me. I'm still learning, taking care. I'm still pretty young. I'm still learning how to do this, but I want to make sure that I can pass on to my kids, whether, you know, guy, girl, making sure they're able to take care of themselves, whatever situation that they're in, that they're not depending on the other sex, not depending on someone else. They both take care of them, that they can be self-sufficient, self-reliant. And when they ever find a partner, if you want to share tasks and do all that, that's up to you. But you as an individual, you have those skills and that ability to be able to provide for yourself, be accountable for yourself, be responsible, and all that. So
Bensky, I would say, man, you ignited so many different memories when you talked about, you know, how your father was directing you, you know, around the house. You make sure you learn how to fold clothes and laundry and, you know, cooking and how to be a provider in that way. You know, for me, I looked up to my mom and my grandmother. You know, that's where I had to get those influences. And so it's almost like I saw the sort of like a masculinity within those two characters in my life. And the thing about it was, I was also deeply yearning to see that through my little brother's dad, because my little brother's dad was helping us out, and you know was kind of in our lives and whatnot, and so I was struggling with that, man. And I'm envious of you, brother. Like you had, you know, and but not to say I'm, you know, in a jealous way or anything like that, but it's more like, you know, it's a different landscape, a different type of experience, just being able to have that guidance that I wouldn't want my future kids to have to take that experience from them. So I definitely applied your pops for that, because I definitely think that over time, you know, even though this is for brothers who had grown up in a, you know, single parent household and mom was the provider, the sole person in the house, they tend to adapt and learn from what it is to be a man from what they either see in the environment. You know, we tend to latch on to those that we think could be, you know, fatherhood type of characters. So, and I want to kind of take this topic you brought up, and you brought up earlier in the show. We talked about toxic masculinity. Brother Brian, we've talked about that. We debated on that, and you know, we kind of validated it a little bit tonight. But do you think there's a solid validation into toxic masculinity? What is that?
Well, when you're talking about toxic femininity, oh, I'm sorry. My
I
bad. My bad.
see what you
I'm
did
sorry.
there.
Okay, my bad. Sorry. So here's the thing. With all due respect, like obviously this discussion is between sensible people. So I always preface everything I say with I'm talking to sensible people. So when somebody says toxic masculinity, I don't jump on them. Like I'm not you guys, but I'm talking about when somebody just says it, some people it triggers them. It triggers a lot of guys and they automatically want to say, oh, well, you're just downing masculinity. Man, for me, I'm a very spiritual person. So like I don't feel that there's a separation between true masculine energy and feminine energy. It's a balance. It's a balance. It's not a negative or positive thing. Most of the time when we are describing toxic masculinity, we're not describing masculinity at all. It depending on how you define it. Because if that's the case, then a lot of behavior, if I'm just labeling it toxic femininity, I'm putting a toxic behavior label in a blanket statement on literally my counterpart in the universe. You know what I mean? Like, the other half of my equation. So it's like, it's a different way of thinking of it. Most people I know are talking about men that are displaying, whether it be chauvinist behaviors. Obviously the society we have is very patriarchal and, it's not built on inclusion. You know what I mean? But again, like a lot of that is learned behavior, especially for Black men, because when you dig through our culture, obviously Bensky's family is Haitian. If you know anything about Haitian people, that's a very proud, some of the strongest African people you are going to learn about, period. If you know anything about Haitian culture, the men there are always great cooks, you know what I mean? Very self-sufficient. And so are the women, you know what I mean? Like these are some people, they both can handle a machete. They know what you know what I'm saying? Like these people have no jump, you know what I mean? So
Eddie.
you start digging, and that's what I mean by when you start digging to the roots of who we are, the prime example, the Black Panther movie. It's not like a crazy thing that you saw that the women were leading armies. Like that's what we come from. You know what I mean? A lot of like, the authors of our masculinity, a lot of it has like this European twist on it. And this is not even to down any culture. I'm just giving you facts. Obviously with European culture, the women have always been in a very chattel kind of position, always. And that's something that we picked up over the last 500 years, but that's not us. You know what I mean? And I have to say that because it's just a fact. So it's almost like we're relearning who we really, really are. And that's why the stuff we do, like, obviously killing each other, you know what I mean? Obviously the domestic homicide that's with amongst Black men and Black women, like different things that are happening with us is because we're not displaying our masculinity the way it should be. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to redirect it and we're trying to go all around about all these different ways. That's why it's not working out, because we're not the authors of our future. We're not defining ourselves. So yes, in a sense, there is a such thing as toxic masculinity, but once you start digging deep, that term becomes obsolete because you start realizing this ain't masculine at all. You know what I mean? Obviously, if I want to say that I'm masculine and I'm arguing with another guy and I can't get my point across, so I start screaming, I'm acting irrationally, and then I can't display myself. And then out of fear, I kill this brother because I just can't. That's not masculine. You left masculine way back to the point where you acted on an irrational thought and you couldn't get your point across. And then because you felt like you couldn't get your point across, you were so scared that you felt like you had to kill this man, or you had to slap your girlfriend. You know what I mean? Or you had to, beat your child or whatever you had to do. Like, it's a lot of things that just aren't. It's the essence of being masculine is thinking through things, taking a second. You know what I mean? Figuring out a different way to do something, figuring out problems. That's masculine energy. This whole toxic masculinity thing, that's just a tag put on behavior that's not masculine at all, in my opinion.
Okay. So Bensky, how do you feel? What do you think about that?
Oh no, I agree 100%. So the first thing that came to mind, in the Bible, there are a lot of verses and passages that talk about like building a family, right? Or like family oriented verses. And I guess like the first one that comes to mind, talking about like husbands are supposed to love your wives pretty much as Christ has loved us, right? And in that passage, it kind of just tells you like how pretty much like how a man is supposed to be. And if you look at those passages, if you believe the Bible, I you know, that's why I follow. I'm Christian. I believe the Bible. If you look at those passages, I would agree with Brian, where a lot of the toxic masculinity is not what true masculinity is, right? True masculinity is, you know, showing love, showing respect. You know, it's not going to be lashing out on your girlfriend just to show dominance. You know, that's not true masculinity. You know, true masculinity is working through problems, right? True masculinity isn't going to be, you know, like killing another black man, like you said, because you guys have a disagreement on a problem. Disagreements happen all the time. That doesn't mean you have to take someone's life. You know, that doesn't mean that you're tough. That doesn't make you cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not true masculinity. So I think a lot of times, you know, and just like other traits of like, you know, trying to be too dominant, too assertive and things like that. Like, you know, a lot of those are characteristics that I don't personally attribute to masculinity. You know, for example, again, like going back to my father, a lot of times we hear toxic masculinity, you think, you know, a man saying that, oh, punching a woman has to do this, a woman has to do that. You know, no, like masculinity is you have to take care of your family. You're responsible. You know what I'm saying? If you're calling yourself the head of the household, right? That doesn't mean I'm the head of the household. I boss everybody around. Head of the household means I take responsibility. It's my job to make sure that we're all working together doing what we have to do. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's true masculinity. What a lot of people say is toxic masculinity, like, first of all, that shouldn't even be traits that we should be displaying. You know, those aren't true, you know, true masculine traits. So unfortunately, though, those are characteristics that a lot of us in our community, you know, that's what we've seen. That's what we grew up with, you know. So if you grow up seeing it, right, a lot of people are products of their environment. If you grow up seeing like your father or the men in your community acting that way, so then you might think, okay, that's right, you know, that's how I'm supposed to act, and you're going to pass that down. When in fact, like, no, that's not truly what it means to be a man. That's not what it really means to be masculine. That's not what it means to be, you know, head of your household and all those things like that. So I completely agree.
No doubt. Okay, so definitely a lot to unpack. Getting into the next thing is how we're viewed in the media. So when we look at Hollywood examples, you know, movies and those things, you know, a lot of these young brothers and young women, young all women, different cultures, different backgrounds. They view us in China. They view us in, you know, Ethiopia. As far as the American Black culture, they view us, you know, Spain, all over the country, all the world. What are some of the things that we can do to rise above those things, that, you know, those depictions? You know, do you think that Hollywood plays a role into or furthering a stereotype? Do you think that, you know, it's something that is just gonna be forever? What do you think on that? And you can start any which one could go from there on that one.
You can go first, Bensky.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So I would say in the media, right? So, you know, media definitely plays a part when you think of like TV shows, movies, even just like the music, right? The stereotypical things that you depict, right? You know, if you talking about music and rap music, right? First thing you kind of think of, you think of like, you know, trap music or whatever, you know, like guns, drugs, violence, right? When you listen to when you watch the news, right? A lot of times when the black man is on there, it's somewhat crime related, right? You know, if you're thinking about certain movies, right, maybe it's like, you know, some street movie, or it's going to be some like slave movie, right? So I think a lot of those things do kind of like depict and give a bad connotation. Do I think it's going to be there forever? I don't know if it's going to be there forever, but it is going to take a while to kind of like unpack and to like take back those stereotypes. But to be solution minded, like, I think, you know, having conversations like these, you know what I'm saying, being transparent, having these conversations, you know, amongst ourselves, right, amongst our family, you know, like, if you know better, you have to do better type thing, you know, like, if you know better, you have to tell somebody, you have to teach somebody, you have to guide somebody, you know, be a mentor, you know, like that's where it starts, you know, on that individual. And then from there, from that individual where we're having those conversations, then, you know, if you're blessed to have a platform, you have to be making sure that you're using your platform, you know, for a good purpose, making sure you're using that platform to maybe break those stereotypes, right? So like, if you're in the film industry, you know, not every black movie has to be about slaves or running the streets. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could just be a regular black movie. Like, I actually had a podcast episode the other day. I was like, yo, like, I just want a black movie about, like, you know, black, you know, like regular cowboy, right? You know, like just a black movie about like space travel. You know what I'm saying? Just like, there's any regular movie with black characters, right? Like, that can just simply help break the stereotypes. Not every black movie has to be about like slaves in the struggle. You know what I'm saying? So like, we can do, it's like little things like that that can help, you know, peel back that stereotype. But first, I have to start with having these conversations individual, talking to each other, speaking to each other, and then, you know, if you have that platform, making sure that you're using that, you know, using that for good.
Brian, Mansa Musa. That's the first person that comes to mind. That's a movie that's been long awaited, and I think it's definitely need to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
You know, what is your thoughts on that?
On just like the media and just
Yeah, the black, yeah, the
well,
media, and then the why we should have Mansa Musa as a film out
well,
today.
well. Here's the thing. So you know, obviously, again, you know, the word define. To you know, you're sculpting it, you're making your own shape. A lot of what we do as Black people in this country is, again, we're not the authors of it. So if we're not the authors of it, every once in a while you'll get like little blurbs where, you know, we look good. You'll get a few Black Panthers. You know what I mean? You'll get a couple movies like The Banker. You'll get a couple good shows. But the grand scheme of it, like what Bensky was saying, like, can I just get, I don't need a big grand movie. Just can you make a normal movie? Like, why can't we have the Notebook? Just some Black characters, the Notebook, just a regular people doing regular things.
Right, right.
It's a reason why. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's just a knee-jerk reaction of like the cycle that we're in. Like, we want these messages to stop, but again, we're not telling the stories.
Mm.
But we're not telling the stories because we're not supporting people like Bensky, you, people with the platforms that want to tell the stories. You know what I mean? Like when somebody comes out and say, "Hey, I need, you know, crowdfunding. I want to have this documentary, but I got to get it off the ground." It's not happening. You know what I mean? So it's like we have, and I don't want to get into that and be all cliche, but it's true. You know what I mean? We have to have a code of conduct when it comes to how we support ourselves, the rite of passage. You know what I mean? Something as simple as what defines masculinity, it leaks into every facet of society, especially the media. You know what I mean? Like the media, you know, literally is like, that's like the tool that is used by every major part of our society, the government, you know what I mean? The medical industry, they all use the media to tailor what they want people to do. So obviously, if we're never telling these stories about whoever, then what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? We can stop listening, but we eventually have to like, we gotta take that narrative. And we can't just grab the baton. We gotta start a whole new race. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's gotta be something like completely new. You know what I mean? And for that to happen, we have to go back to the root of exactly why we are the way we are. You know what I mean? Emmett Till, you know, he was killed. It was horrible what happened to him, but it's how they justified it. The fact that we were supposedly related to baboons, we're beasts, we're nothing but sexualized animals. So they were easily able to just justify how he was killed, still to this day. You know what I mean? All the way to Ahmaud Arbery. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we're not telling these stories, it's real easy to, when the UK and these other countries say, well, how are y'all coming over here dictating what's going on in our country when this is how you treat your Black people? Yeah, but they're animals anyway. Look how they kill each other. You know what I mean? Look at these movies that we put out. They're animals. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where it's like we have to, not only do we have to not listen to the stories, we have to tell the stories. Just like with you guys talking about your fathers, do you know that Black fathers are in their children's lives more, if the same, if not more statistically than any other ethnic group?
Mm.
But that's not told. The problem with us is our families aren't together. But
Mm.
our fathers are just as present as anybody. But if you ask the average person, if you ask the average Black person, they'll say that stat is, they wouldn't believe it. You know what I mean? Because we're not the authors of our stories. You know what I mean?
So Brian, just because I want to turn this over to Bensky when I ask this question, we're gonna go back into you. But do you think is there a way, Bensky, to return, or for Black families to return to that family structure of like the 40s to 60s? So before the separation, you know, before the introduction of the welfare system, before the crack epidemic, do you think that a unified front, you know, that we'll actually see an increase in more of that family structure, togetherness, that, you know, like our grandmothers used to talk about, my grandfather used to talk about?
Um, I think it's possible. I'm never gonna say it's not possible, but I think, you know, before we can get there, we have to see and we have to understand, especially my generation, right? Because I think my generation where we're at, right, like we're going to be next in the generation under us, right? First you have to see why it's important, you know what I'm saying? So interesting, like, first of all, that stat about, you know, Black fathers being their lives, I would have to admit, you know, for most part, if I walk around, or in my head, you know, my stereotypic thought is that, you know, the Black family is not necessarily together, Black fathers aren't. Like, that's a stereotypical thing. So to hear that is wonderful. But, you know, something to emphasize within our Black community is to understand the importance of the family structure, the importance of the family unit, right? I think once we understand that, I think that's when we can, all right, cool. Once we understand it's important and why it's important, then we can ingrain that, and then, you know, definitely pass it on. You know what I'm saying? Like, the family unit, you know, it's, you know, it helps create wealth. It helps create, emotional stability, you know, family structure, like, you know, community, right? Like, how all that is tied together. Once we have a better understanding of why it's important, and then being, you know, one of my favorite words now is being intentional, right? Being intentional of, you know, making sure that, you know, the families are together, making sure that, you know, helping to pass down generational wealth and generational knowledge. You know, it's not just money, but it's that education, you know. So I think, you know, once we, you know, help solidify the importance, why it's important, and then taking those steps to make sure that, you know, we're talking to each other, we're communicating with each other, we're sharing knowledge with each other of, you know, how to stay together, how to stay more unified, so we can build better families and better communities.
No doubt, Brian.
Oh yeah.
So definitely a lot that, and I agree with you, Bensky, on that. That's definitely true. I think we got to have a solidified purpose and what we do. I just wanted to break real quick about this particular situation that just happened not too long ago. One of the followers, I was looking at the IG live, was kind of looking up, and a guy I used to work with, who's actually, you know, he's actually white, and, you know, and there's no love lost. If, you know, it's what he did. He's a huge Trump supporter. And now it's not, I know the political climate of what's going on in the community. I don't want to dive too much into this, but I can tell he feels offended because of what we're talking about tonight, because he put up an emoji, like a negative emoji. Now I won't kind of get into what it was, but it was a negative emoji, whatever. And so I wanted to make it clear that what we're talking about tonight, because we're talking about black masculinity, that this is in no way, you know, a racial thing where I'm saying, hey, I'm racist to any other culture, or I'm racist to any other, you know, any other type of, you know, a race, skin tone. That's definitely not the case. I want to make sure that's known. You know, hey, I'm a positive dude. If that's, you know, I appreciate he making himself known, so I know how to kind of move with that dude. But I want to make it known for anybody who watches this channel that, you know, what we're talking about is something that we're talking about, you know, black masculinity. And the reason why that's important is that I feel as though is that there's a lot of negative things that's happened or over the course of many of years. And this is a topic that's always come up. It's not something that's new, but for us to talk about it, that does not mean that we're trying to alienate any other culture or anything like that. We put a lot of focus on topics that really focus on, you know, really enriching the young brothers. And so I think that's important. And Brian or Bensky, you guys can chime in when I talk about this. I want to make sure that, you know, that's very clear. But getting back into it, Brian, go ahead.
So I got to say something to that effect. So
Okay.
First of all, I definitely appreciate your graciousness by doing that. But I'll say this: if you don't know, then that's on you.
Sure.
I've known you for a while, Chris. I've never felt that you were malicious at any point in any discussion that we've ever had. You've known me for a while. You know how I operate. You know what I mean? Respect, caring, showing love in everything I do. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to take any disrespect, but at the same time, you know, I'm I'm so far removed from fighting over squabbles. You know, men fight over resources. So I just want to let you know, I appreciate you saying that, but you don't have to explain anything to somebody who's so frail and fragile that they can't even, why are you here?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you're not here to add anything, why are you here? You know what I'm saying? So,
and I think and I agree with you, and I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like, you know what, this is something I'm going to give to a demographic of young people that I feel as though they have been looked over, they have been forgotten, they are not always appreciated. Sometimes we are misunderstood, sometimes we are abused, sometimes we are passed over or passed up. And we've gone through, a journey. I'm a Black man, and that's not to say that because you say you're a Asian man or a white man or a Latino man that, you are, racist or I'm racist or anything like that. But I also want to focus on based on my culture, and I want to encourage in future episodes other cultures to talk about their backgrounds, and we're going to talk about it, and things are going to come up. But I just want to make sure that the listeners know that this channel, because we're talking about Black masculinity, because the topics are going to be a whole range of things, I want to make it known, hey, I'm not here to be this racist dude, whatever the case may be is. I want to make sure we do right as well. So Bensky, what is your take, my man?
No, I definitely agree. There are times when, you just have to me, the way I think about it, if you're like, we're speaking to our community right here, right? So like, if you want to observe, from outside, if we're Black men talking about the Black community, that doesn't mean that we're racist and that we don't care about other cultures and things like that. We're Black men talking about the Black community. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's all it is. All right. If you take offense to that, I don't really know what to tell you, but that's just the fact, and that's just the truth. It is Black men talking about the Black community, and we're doing it. If you're doing it publicly, I don't see why someone would take offense, but that's all it is. Black men talking about the Black community.
No doubt.
I mean, we know why, but I don't want to, what I'm saying? We know why. It's a lot of scary ass people out there, but
Yeah.
Black people, we've shown, even the history that we don't write, it's proven that we're the most compassionate, inclusive people that walk the earth. So I don't have anything to explain to anybody about inclusion or compassion when it comes to my people. We are the most, everybody can get on, everybody can come eat. So I don't have to,
No doubt.
we don't have to explain that to anybody.
Oh, no doubt. And I think that, if you're hungry and you come to my house, all I'm asking for is, bring some to the house. I don't mind sharing my plate. I don't mind, popping a bottle. Don't be funny acting like you can't bring no plate and add to this cookout.
Yeah. Even if
I'm
you
just
still owe me
saying.
that 50, even if you still owe me that 50 that you don't want to talk about, like,
You got a hard time when it comes to like, oh, I owe you that $20. I'm gonna get you next week.
yeah, I would get, yeah.
No doubt. So, all right. So, last question, man. We've been on for a good hour. It's been a lot of good conversations. What can young Black men do now to grow in their community, to grow in the community of maybe New York, Chicago, even the smaller cities? What can they do to really kind of grow and excel at this point going forward? And
Man, I think it's each one teach one, each one teach one. And one of my favorite sayings is lifting as we climb. Shout out to NABA, National Association of Black Accountants. I was in that organization throughout my undergrad, and I still am, but like, that's the slogan, lifting as we climb. And that's been part of my life, and that's what this is. This is what Everybody Eats is about, the podcast. That's what, I think that's as simple as, it's real simple, but I think it's real powerful, right? The more that you learn, the more that you educate yourself, the more that you grow, making sure that you're teaching someone and bringing someone along with you, and, it's lifting as you climb. So it's like, as you're going up, you're making sure you're bringing up someone, and making sure that they're coming to your level or higher, and everyone does that to one person. That's how you grow the community. It's not necessarily, so focused on not everyone has to be a rapper, ball player. It's not necessarily all about having such a huge platform, right? Just simple day-to-day conversations with your fellow brother, whether it's your blood brother or just someone in the community. Little things like that have a really big impact. You know what I'm saying? So it's just being a positive impact, lifting as you climb. Each one teach one, just like all that is, as you learn, making sure you're bringing up somebody with you, and everyone does that. It's a multiplying butterfly effect, so you want to make sure, you're being a positive, you're being a positive influence, you're educating yourself, self-education, doing all that, and making sure that someone doesn't know, you help them out. You don't, there's a quote by, I think, Louis Farrakhan. It's like, when you see someone fall, you don't laugh, learn. You know what I'm saying? So it's like making sure that instead of laughing at your brother or something like that, you see them make a mistake, you say, all right, what can I learn from that? And what can I teach you? And what can I teach someone else from when I saw that him make a mistake? You know what I'm saying? So it's little things like that. Like, you know, it's going to take time. Obviously, things don't happen overnight, but you have to start someday. You have to start eventually. You know, so instead of one day, make it day one, you know, so.
No doubt. And
Agree.
yeah, no doubt. And I know, Brian, you're going to want to chime in on this one, but I definitely think that education has its place, and I'm not just talking about going to college or just going to college. You know, I went to 2 historically Black colleges and universities before I landed on a PWI, and I got to see the cultural aspect of the way how each setting is a little different and how they respond to you know, our success and our achievements and all that stuff. And I can tell you that, you know, just from those experiences, man, like there's a lot of there's a lot that needs to go into as far as the community aspect and how we are centering around each other and making sure we kind of got each other back, and not just think that, you know, hey, we're trying to you know, be better than each other, or you know, reference what someone else has to be this and that. So I definitely think that, you know, we got to look out for each other. I think we start from the aspect of just a village. It takes a village. It definitely does. And making sure, I know back in the day, you used to hear stories of it was your other person's mother that was looking out for your kid sometimes. And you know, your parent, as a parent, you turn away a little bit, your kid acting up, that other parent steps in like, if you don't bring your behind over here and listen to your mom, whatever. And so we can't do that anymore because of the politics of everything and how, you know, everything's legal now. You can't hit your kids and this and that. And I'm not advocating for violence against kids, but I am advocating for discipline. I am advocating for the structure of being a parent and talking to your kids and having those talks with your kids about the evils of the world. And my grandmother used to give me, and I don't know, it's the same for a lot of Black American culture, but in a West Indian household, my mom's from Barbados, my pop's from Haiti. My grandmother was the one that said, you know, watch out for this, watch out for that. You know, something happened, this, make sure you don't do that. You know, and so, and don't, this is the biggest one. Don't drink that out of that cup that you done left at the party and come back to. You know, make sure you get a new cup or something like that. Like, these are some of the things that I can't speak for every family household is getting the same thing, but just having those conversations and being able to open that up for, hey, you know, having that general awareness, I think it definitely helps. Brian, what do you think on that?
I mean, gentlemen, I don't really have much else to say. I mean, obviously, you know, what Bensky said, you know, each one teach one. That's a big one. Obviously, you know, a big thing that I'm starting to see more and more about, like when I obviously dig into, you know, the roots of, you know, our culture and how rich it is. One thing you see is there's a rite of passage. You know what I mean? There is a plight of, you know, manhood and also womanhood. But one thing that's, you know, constant in that is like that togetherness, that nurturing, that, you know what I mean, the simple presence of, you know, what a father or a man should be. You know what I mean? Obviously with Bensky, you know, obviously he seems like an exceptional man. Obviously he can tell you all the things that his dad could do and everything, but what is in his spirit, what's ingrained in Bensky is that presence. Every time his father touched him on his shoulder, every time his father kissed him on his forehead or whatever, those little things that we kind of have like lost, and we always think of, you know, obviously, you know, you got a lot of guys nowadays that, you know, are not sure of their sexuality, or that's some gay shit, or, you know, it's a lot of that going on. And it's like, we have to reconnect into what true masculinity is in the purest sense of that form, to like transfer that positive energy. You know what I mean? Like, to whoever, because your progeny doesn't always have to be your son. You know what I mean? It's somebody else's son. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be your daughter. The person that's somebody else's daughter, you should look at them like your daughter. You know what I mean? Like, and this is something like, I made a lot of mistakes, you know, treated my mom bad at times, treated a lot of women bad at times. So it's like as you start getting older, your life gets shorter, you start noticing, man, I gotta really, if I truly want to have everlasting life, I have to live in other people. You know what I mean? So, and the only way to do that is you got to have like a code. Another thing too, I would say to young black men, something that's really helped me over the last like 10 years, know where you're getting your information from. I mean, how simple that is. Again, the author of, if you don't know who's writing something or know where this message is coming from or know what the agenda is, you're living out a fate that you didn't even, you didn't even plan. You know what I mean? John Henry Clark said it best. You know what I mean? The best indicator of the future is what? The past. So if you can't have the discipline to go back and look at, why things are, why you are the way you are, then you can't really get anywhere. You know what I mean? If I had a t-shirt, I would literally say, if it's somebody who's not in the history books, you probably need to know about that person, especially if you're a young black person. You know what I mean? Because what is it? As we get older and we start looking up these people and reading these people, these great people that come from us, we're like, why weren't we taught about this? That's another discussion. But it's like when you start reading into this stuff, you're like, man, this is all this knowledge of these great people. And it's not even about being black. These are just great people. Why are these people kept in this small box? Like, again, that's another discussion. But if I could impart that on younger black people, it sucks that we have to go so far outside the norm to find information about how great we are. But that's something I would impart. You know what I mean? Know the information where you're getting it from before you just start living it out, repeating it. You know what I mean? Like, do some research. Find out who you are and who you want to be. You know what I mean? That's masculine.
For sure, for
You know
sure.
what I mean?
So if I could add one thing real quick, there's a quote that I love from a song from Common. It's called Black America Again. So at the end of the song, he actually quotes, I believe, Stevie Wonder. And the quote goes, "A man can't get himself together until he knows who he is and be proud of what and who he is and where he comes from." And I find that really powerful, right? So you can apply that, whether it's going to be like culture, whether it's going to be heritage. But I think that can be applied in a lot of things, right? So you can't really know who you are and you can't really impart, I feel like either knowledge, wisdom, or part of, yourself to someone else until you kind of understand, who you are as an individual, kind of like either, who came before you, what happened before you. So similar, like you said, like before you can, impact the future, make any things about the future, you have to know the past, what happened before you, mistakes, positive and negatives that happened before you, so you can be like, okay, that is something good that happened and that's what I should be repeating, or these are some negative things that happened before me, this is what I should be learning, not making those same mistakes, so I could go pass that on. So I just want to add that.
No, then I'm glad you did, man. I definitely think that quotes are incremental when it comes down to just general awareness, and that was definitely dope. And I think that would give us into the next topic is reading, that research. This is actually a dope book. It's by a gentleman by the name of William July II. It's called Brothers, Lust, and Love. Definitely a great book to unpack. It came out, it's been, I think, since the 90s, I want to say. But it's been, I dived into it actually this year, right around the start of the pandemic. But definitely a dope book. Any brother out there just needs some general guidance. A lot to unpack with this. And so, any final thoughts? What are something that we missed? Something that you feel as though, hey, I got to bring this up real quick before we call it an end tonight, because I know we done gave a lot of different substance and we unpacked a few things. What do you guys think?
I mean, I enjoy myself. And if I could say anything for other people that do things like this, whether you're a younger or older black man, don't be afraid to tell the truth. Even if it's a truth that doesn't paint you in a good light. You know what I mean? When you're talking amongst your brothers and you're trying to have a good fellowship, it's not time to poke out your chest, talk about accolades or whatever. And it's not a shame. And it's also not the time for your other brothers to try to shame you for what you may be going through or struggling with. Be truthful. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be honest, other men of other cultures, they're doing that. And they're doing that unapologetically. You know what I mean? Which is why, you know what I mean, we trying to put ourselves in these boxes or whatever, and we just don't, we'll never achieve what our true essence is. You know what I mean? Even when our light is dimmed, it's so far brighter than anybody else's. So we got to just let that shine. You know what I mean? Just tell the truth and be comfortable in our spaces. You know what I mean?
And I would just say this too, you know, and I'm glad you brought that up, Brian. But don't take for granted, don't take so much into what social media has a depiction of what the Black man is, or how to be, what it is to be a man in general. You know, a lot of times I'm seeing posts out there and saying, you know, he cried, he must be a little fruity, or, you know, gay, or whatever the case may be. Or, and, you know, if that's your culture, that's your lifestyle, it's your lifestyle. But let's stop getting in the habit of, you know, taking for granted, you know, these certain negatives, like I said, those negative stereotypes of, you know, all these different boxes that we put ourselves in about, hey, you know, in order to be a man in general, we ain't doing this, we're not showing emotion, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
You know, I think some of the best men I've seen, or, you know, a former masculinity, was a man who was able to express himself and being able to show his emotion in a way that you know, he was able to grow from it. And so I definitely don't want to condemn any man for that. So definitely do your research, you know, be hungry for knowledge, be hungry to succeed. College isn't for everybody, okay? It's definitely, you know, you want to do something that you feel as though you will be successful in this world. Everybody has a journey. And I want your journey to be successful for you. So I want to close out by saying thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show for Cultured Unplugged. This is really a first, you know, run through that, you know, we're going to be a first of many, hopefully, run throughs. I definitely want to invite both of you guys to the future shows and episodes that we'll do. But without further ado, I just want to close out by saying, hey, peace, love, and to you. Be safe. Again, you can catch us every week. Okay, so every week starting January 11th, we are going to be on. We're going to have a whole lot of different topics to talk about, a whole lot of different experiences and cultures to bring on the show. Not just Black people, not just Black men, but we want to engage with everybody. We want to make sure we have healthy conversations because we're about thriving, we're about building, we're about encouraging, and we want to make sure that we give you the utmost mentorship digitally that we can. Again, you can follow me on Cultured Unplugged on Instagram, Cultured Unplugged, obviously, here at the channel. Like and subscribe, hit that like button, hit the thumbs up. We're definitely glad to have you. And good night, fellas.
Have a good night, folks.
Good night.